Hello and welcome to another episode of the Student Garden Thought Leaders series. Today I'm super excited to be joined by Sam Devlin. Sam, welcome.
Thank you.
Sam's the co-founder of an amazing business called Careers Department. Sam, maybe if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about what you guys do, but also about the journey, because I know the story is amazing, so I'm sure everyone listening will be keen to hear that too.
So the Careers Department, we've been around for about 10 years now, but not always under the name the Careers Department. When we started the business, the goal was just to help young people understand what options were out there for careers or jobs or what to study.
Yep.
So my co-founder Sarah and I started a website, and we just pulled together all of these stories from different career professionals about a day in their life, what they liked about their job, etc. And then in the first month, we had 80,000 hits to the site.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was just a free to access website.
Yeah.
We both had our other jobs at this point. And from that point, we had unis and institutions starting to contact us and saying, can we spend money with you to do advertising on your site, because we simply can't get these kind of eyeballs in our own marketing comms channels. And then we also had schools saying to us, would you come in and speak to our students about careers and pathways, etc. And at that point, we weren't really sure what business model we wanted to pursue.
Yep.
But in working with some schools, we decided that we would lock off the platform and make it a paid to access product. And in doing that, schools would pay us a subscription fee per month for students to access it. So that model was launched about 5 years ago. And now we work with 750 schools around Australia.
Wow.
And they pay per student to access the platform. And inside the platform, there are virtual work experience modules, gamified skills modules, there's day in life content, lesson plans, and a lot of that has been aligned to classroom curriculum.
Yep.
So a head of department, being the head of a science department, can pick up the platform and say, today I'm going to run an exercise on being a marine biologist, and they're learning about concepts that they would be learning in the science curriculum, but equally they're learning about a careers avenue as well. So we've found a really niche spot inside the school system.
Wow.
And we've also got tools in there like Scholarship Finder, Course Finder, ePortfolio Builder, etc.
Yeah.
So that's what we do and how we operate.
Cool. And I'm interested to know, in terms of when you decided to spin up that website 10 years ago, what is your background academia? What kind of was the driver for you guys in terms of, help young people obviously find the right course, find the right career? What kind of drove you, I suppose, to get into this?
I think Sarah and I just looked at our own experiences, and we felt that our high school careers program didn't necessarily prepare us for life after school, and we didn't necessarily understand the relationship between a course and industry, and we wanted to do that.
Yeah, cool. And do you think, obviously you've kind of been in this journey now for a decade. Have you seen it kind of evolve and change? And is the course curriculum coming closer to kind of industry outcomes? I mean, I'm sure it's nuanced depending on the school you're at and the program that you're in. I mean, certainly I look at from the perspective of when I studied, it was like math, science, arts, design. Now I look at some of the courses on offer in schools is gets pretty niche, and it feels like, which is an amazing thing because people can kind of really follow their passion. Do you think schools are really adapting and kind of becoming more aligned to industry as time goes on? And is that sort of the trend that you guys see?
I think there's definitely been a huge uplift. I think that has come from pressure or encouragement from industry. I think industry are really good at saying, this is the talent that we need and these are the skills of the future that we're looking for. And they're starting to go further down the pipeline and work at a grassroots level and try to work with schools and say, let's teach kids technology skills from year 7 onwards.
Yep.
So that we're not pressuring them or encouraging them to go into cybersecurity when they've got no interest in it. They've got those fundamental skills and they've built an aptitude and an interest for 10 years now, and we're creating a really nice pipeline of talent. So I think industry are doing an amazing job, and we work with so many industry partners just to do exactly that, is encourage interest earlier.
So I know you collect a lot of data around career intentions and kind of post-school study intentions. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what you're seeing in the data and some of the trends kind of emerging in the data?
We get access to so much rich student data through the site. So when a student logs into our platform, we ask them a series of questions. So what do you want to study when you finish, if you do want to study? Where? What career do you want to go into? Do you want to relocate after school? Do you want to take a gap year? We have all of that student intentional data. And then we're able to marry that up with behavioral data. So we will know which modules that student is completing. We will know which content they're watching or listening to, how long they're on our site for, and then we can see the interaction between student behavior and their intentions. So we have this really rich data set that we can pull insights from. So I guess specifically, to give you an example, we just did a study where we asked 41,000 students in year either 11 or 12, what do you want to do after school? It was fascinating. Probably the biggest takeaway we had was that 94% of those students said that they were more stressed or more worried about people asking them, so what are you going to do when you finish school, as opposed to what mark do you think you're going to get, which I thought was so interesting because there's so much media buzz and hype around ATAR and students are so stressed about exams. But this survey actually told us they're more stressed about what they're going to do next year when they finish and what are they going to enroll in, which I thought was so interesting. From that same data set, we saw that 73% of students wanted to pursue studying after school. What's interesting about that is that was a drop from last year. So a 9.3% drop from the year previous. And we wanted to explore that because that's a huge shift in the data. And we asked those students who had shifted their intentions from I want to study to now I don't, or I'm not sure. And a big bulk of those students said, I don't understand the relationship between my course and industry, and I don't know which course to study. And we saw another big vertical of students saying, I would actually consider doing a cadetship model or going into industry where there's a study aspect to it. So that was a huge shift that we saw in a recent study.
Interesting. And is that, that kind of cadetship offering at that level, because obviously, we've got an internship program here at Student Garden called the Sprout program, where we kind of, generally we're bringing people who are in their final year of study to come in and learn about, how can they apply the things they've been studying into, an agency environment. But I haven't kind of heard about that model and kind of coming out of high school. So is that kind of emerging more and more from industry? I mean, I know in some areas, but is that something that we're seeing more opportunities for people to kind of enter the industry at that stage?
So it's certainly new, but it's coming, and they do it a lot in the UK. We see a lot of school students over there getting apprenticeships in tech, accounting, etc. And I was actually speaking to an accounting firm last week who've taken on their first 2 cadets who will be studying a Bachelor of Accounting whilst working full-time, and they're just going to see how that goes. There's tech businesses like Atlassian who are recruiting direct from high school. Then you've got, commercial construction firms who they've had the cadetship model for years and years and years. So it is coming, and I think that's just because industry realised that it's too late in the game to be trying to recruit people once they've finished university. They need to go earlier and further down the pipeline to get great talent with the skills they need.
Totally. And I think, the benefits for the students in terms of being able to kind of, peek behind the curtain. Because a lot of the time, I know certainly when I studied a Bachelor of Design, and look, they did a pretty good job of kind of bringing industry in. But, I definitely did not feel like I had a very good idea of what the career was going to look like beyond us studying, and I was just focused on kind of the assignments and the grades kind of there and there. So I think the idea, I love that's kind of being introduced as a new model at that kind of high school level. I think that's awesome progress.
And I think your experience is not unique at all. 90% of people we know who went to university would probably echo the same sentiment. I was studying this course. I didn't know what job I wanted to have. I didn't know how it translated to industry. But when we look the next generation down, students want to know. And I think that is because if you look at the media cycle at the moment, it is all about the supply and demand of the job market and the cost of living crisis. And students or young people are just so much more aware of the importance of getting a good job. And they want to know that the qualification they have holds real currency in the job market.
Yeah, cool. And for the education institutions, whether they're universities, vocation, TAFE, what are the things that's really kind of influencing students at that kind of high school level, particularly at kind of year 11, year 12? What are the things that are kind of influencing them, and what's important to a university to kind of be able to reach those people on their terms?
We did our first pilot working with the university this year.
Yeah.
Our business model was working with schools and they were paying per student, as I said. And we also worked with industry who wanted to develop content and campaigns to upskill young people. But we'd never had universities in the mix. And we started working with University of New South Wales and we focused on 8 different course areas and we developed virtual work experience modules with that university that allowed high school students to test their interest, their aptitude, their skill, their passion for that course inside high school. And we aligned those different modules or those activities to classroom curriculum. And because we already are embedded in that school, it's very easy for us to say to a design and technology teacher, here is a module on architecture that we worked on with the university. Do you want your students to do a feasibility study for an architectural build? And that teacher goes, great. I don't have to research that lesson plan. It fits really well into our curriculum. And then they roll it out. And for those kids who are studying design and tech, then they get to look behind the curtain at what it could be like to study that university. So we're just trying to reinvent that work experience model where someone gets to try something before they buy it. And if they love it, great, enroll. And if you don't like it, equally, that's great to know because you're not going to drop out in 6 months.
Yeah, and you can cross something off your list.
So
you mentioned that concept of the integration of, course content and universities partnering with careers department is obviously one way to do that and sounds like a really amazing way to kind of reach students. But how do universities connect with with the next generation and communicate with them in a way that they feel confident, maybe not having all the answers or trying to get to kind of the answer, which is, what am I going to do next and where am I going to kind of find fulfillment either in study or work?
I think my biggest piece of advice would be just learn from that student data in that students now want to know the relationship between the course that they're studying and industry. They want to know where that degree or that qualification is going to take them. And so make sure that we're giving accurate and relatable stories to students. So, I look at historically, there's been so many ads that are selling a Bachelor of Exercise Science, and how a university would wrap that up is they would have someone running on a field, like following the swans on, carrying a drink bottle, and then they say study a Bachelor of Exercise Science, and a student in high school goes, oh my God, I love the swans, I want to do that. That is not a true or realistic representation of where that qualification is going to take you. And I think students are becoming aware of that. So it's about telling more realistic stories and working with businesses like the careers department who can develop a module for you with using that architecture example where a student can try a course, see what it's really about, and then you've got a student who's enrolling in your course and who's going to last the whole time. They're not going to enroll based on a marketing spin that they've seen. They're going to enroll because they've tried it, they've got an aptitude and an interest for it.
Yeah. And you mentioned, you gave the cyber example before. Like, what are some of the areas where you guys just kind of can't produce enough content and modules fast enough based on kind of the demand that I'm sure you guys are getting? What are kind of the areas where you're seeing the most amount of interest in kind of the jobs of the future?
So that's a big part of our job in the product team, is to make sure that we are sharing jobs of the future with students. So year on year, we see industries like medical science, exercise science, physiotherapy, law. They are so, like year on year, they're one of the highest areas that students want to go into. We know though that tech is a huge area but we know that tech is an area that we need more students to go into when we look at the supply and demand of the workforce. So what we'll do at our end is, if we want to encourage students to do UX design or product design as an example, rather than telling them this is a tech job, we will say, you're really interested in graphic design, you like psychology, you like how people think, let's show you a job that fits that intersection of creativity and psychology. They don't enter it thinking that it's a tech job. We show them the module. They go, I really liked that way of thinking. What is the job related to that? And it might be a tech position. So that's what we do at our end, is we pipe students into work experience modules or content that they might not have initially considered, but we'll set them up for the future because there is demand for it.
Yeah.
So we're not necessarily saying to every single student, become a lawyer because you're passionate about it. We'll say, what do you like about law? Is it the critical thinking?
Yeah.
What skills interest you in that profession? And let's show you 6 other options that equally have those skills in the job, but might be more opportunistic for you.
Yeah, lovely. Just kind of listening to you talk about, whether it's industry, whether it's the schools, you mentioned the university, it sounds like, it's that kind of connection and that kind of ecosystem that's kind of really what's helping to kind of drive the success for you guys. Is that kind of a big part of your role? Is like, I imagine, is it as much about the schools as it is about industry, as it is about, the organizations that you're mentioning? Like, how are you kind of orchestrating all these different stakeholders? Because it sounds like a pretty intense and massive job.
For us, the user is the student and they're always the center.
Yeah.
So whenever we work with a school or an industry partner or a university or a tertiary supplier, it's how can they provide value to our user. Mm-hmm. So for the student, they're never paying for their license. Either their mum and dad have bought it for them or their school has bought it for them. Then when they go into the university stage, that might be an industry partner of ours paying for their license. Yeah. So they're always the user, but never our customer. And so our job is to make sure as we keep them along their customer journey, and their customer journey in this instance is finding a career they like, finding a course they like, giving them the opportunity to test different avenues and see the application of that course. While they go along this learning phase, we're supporting them via our different customer channels, being schools. And so I think it's just always, for us, success comes down to getting good outcomes for students. And that is just always remembering that they're the center of this.
Yeah, I love that. In terms of, there's a lot of change happening, whether it's the higher education, high school level, we talked about technology a little bit, looking into the future, what do you kind of see, how do you see kind of high school evolving and this kind of transition from, your final years of high school into either a career or studies or both? How do you kind of see that evolving, and what are some of the trends you think are going to kind of emerge, over the next decade?
I think high school careers education is no longer going to be something that we just start critically thinking about in years 10, 11 and 12. I see so many schools, and I speak to schools weekly, who are now embedding programs in primary school. So unconscious bias can start as early as 8 years old. So what that means is at 8 years old, if you have never seen a male nurse or you've never seen a female builder, unconsciously in your mind, you have already ruled that out as a career that you might want to pursue because you haven't been able to identify with someone in that job role. So when I say careers in primary school, it's not about asking them to pick a vocational course when they're 10. Yeah. It's just showing them a diverse range of jobs and embedding concepts of opportunity in their mind.
Love that.
And then we work with schools from year 7 to year 12. And in year 7, it's about understanding you. What are your skills, your interests, your values, and how do these relate to careers? So it's, again, not about picking a career that early. And then as you go through each school year, it's adding more critical thinking and more knowledge into a student's tool set so that when they get to year 11 and 12, it's not, oh my God, what am I going to do next year?
Yeah.
They've got the skill set to evaluate lots of opportunities. So I think that's the trend, is just having careers programs starting in primary school and rolling them right through till we finish.
Yeah, and it's less about, their ATAR and more about their capabilities, right? Is kind of what you're talking to.
And even, when you look at subject selection in year 10, no one would think that that is a careers decision, but it is. Because when we look at our data, we'll ask students, did your year 11 and 12 subjects provide any kind of compass for what you decide to do after school? More than half say absolutely. Yeah. Because if I didn't study, chemistry, biology, and a certain level of maths in year 11 and 12, but then I want to be a doctor, well, you're not going to be a doctor because you don't have the prerequisites. So when we look at the careers journey, in year 9, when you're picking those subjects, or in year 10, when you're picking those subjects, that is actually the first time you're carving out an individual pathway in your education, which does have an anchor on your career. Totally. So there are so many little incremental steps that happen through school that are not fostered.
Yeah. Last question. If you were kind of to go back in time and talk to year 11, year 12 Sam, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
I think it would be about educating yourself about industry. I think it's about looking at the supply and demand of different jobs, seeing where emerging trends are, and making sure that you make a decision based on research and not just jumping into a course because it sounds prestigious, or not jumping into an institute because you've always wanted to go there.
Yeah.
Start being more critical and evaluating these opportunities and saying, okay, does this institution have a great relationship with industry? What is the currency of this qualification? Am I going to need to do a post-grad? Questions like that are the difference between making a decision and making a great decision.
Yeah, great advice. Well, I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. If people want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to kind of reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. Samantha Devlin on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.